Programming can be difficult. However, one thing that can really enhance or hinder your productivity is collaborating and working on large teams. It's fantastic to do this because you can supercharge your ability to build features and develop new things on the app that you're working on. But at the same time, it is easy to step on each other's toes and make a mess while you collaborate. One thing that you should do in general is use some kind of type of version control, like Git and or GitHub. But this is especially required when you're working with small, medium, and especially large teams. Here it's important that everybody is working on sort of their own version of the code to not run into conflicts with each other and keep the code base organized and clean. So today we're going to talk about the basic GitHub hygiene to achieve that goal and keep a clear understanding of what's going on with the code base. When working with a team without any sort of version control or proper GitHub hygiene, it can be difficult to see what is going on, what changes to the code are being made, and maybe some part of a code change is slightly or in some way affecting what you're working on right now. Maybe someone is refactoring a button component and you don't work on the button, but you are using the button component. So in this case, it's valuable to use good GitHub practices in order to understand what's going on and not to be blindsided and blocked by unforeseen changes to the code base. First, you should create feature branches. So when you pick up a new feature that you want to work on, ideally it should be a ticket. Based on that ticket, you should create a branch on Git, which you name somehow after this feature with a clear and concise descriptor of what the branch is doing. That way, your work is in isolation of all the other work that is going on. And it is easy to see what set of changes are on the branch. You can also easily see what other people are working on based on their branches and their branch names. The next step would be to commit regularly with nice and descriptive commit messages. There's flexibility here in what you should do and what you shouldn't do, because later you should squash and merge, more on that later, but that will basically remove all of your commit messages to a degree. You can select on your own what setting you want, but it can happen that all your commit messages disappear at the end of the feature lifecycle. And so maybe you should have good commit messages and maybe not, but in any case, it helps to understand people that look and review your code before it gets merged, the logical steps that you were going through. And in the case that something goes wrong, someone can go back through the history of your commits and have a good understanding of what was going on. An important thing to consider when committing is that the state of the commit should be working code. This is not completely necessary, but it really helps when you try out something new and it doesn't work out and you don't really know why things are not compiling anymore or why there's some really nasty bug that you just can't debug properly. It is really tough if your commit history is not fully working. So if you check out previous commits, if the state of the code is still poor, if it's still not broken, that's not good. In that idea, the commit would be something like a mini pull request, more on that later, and be its own chunk or a feature set, a small feature set, so to say. Next, when you're mostly done with your feature, you can open a pull request. Ideally, you could open a draft pull request so that other team members know that your pull request is not yet ready for review. But when it is ready for review, so in the later stages, you can open the pull request and you should put a nice title and a nice description, which should be brief and concise and explain what the pull request is doing. Ideally, when you work on a front-end feature, maybe you build a new page or sales feature or something like that, you could include a screenshot or even better, a GIF or a screen recording that is easy to watch. But usually that is really tough to do and overkill, so I recommend just doing a screenshot. On Mac, there's a really handy keyboard combination. I think it's Control-Shift-Command-4, and this allows you to select a portion of your screen And you can set in the preferences that this goes to your clipboard. So you can select a portion of your screen. It will screenshot there. The screenshot will be in the clipboard. You could also link to the issue, so the ticket of your pull request and of other Figma file or other documentation. And that will make it very obvious for other people what the role of your pull request is and understand what you're doing. This is very useful if something later breaks and you want to go through the history of the pull request, what features have been done, and then you go to this pull request that's maybe 3 months or weeks or years old, and then you see sort of what was going on. You have a nice overview. Finally, it is good to self-review your code. Usually I find that I'm fairly blind to mistakes, to simple mistakes like forgetting something or having a spelling error or not adhering to a convention or naming convention. I'm somewhat blind to them in my code editor, but when I see it in the GitHub review tab, the file diff tab, it's easier to catch these errors. So here it's a good idea to self-review your code, to write comments on stuff that needs explaining. And then finally you can have someone review your code. They will most likely find some things to improve on, and you can discuss with them in the comments and apply their changes. Request them to review your code, and hopefully they will approve it. At this point you should not merge it. Instead you should squash and merge it, where you combine all your commits into one commit, and you can give this one commit a nice description. Here I would pay a lot of attention. Some people, they just use a large bullet point of things. I prefer to just have one concise description that explains the pull request, because if someone goes to the Git history, they will not see the pull request title. They will just see this commit description. The benefits of squashing all your commits into one is that when 5 people work on 5 different features and 4 of them finish it first and they merge it into the branch without squashing, the 5th person pulling from master to keep their branch updated will see 120 commit messages maybe. And the commit history will be polluted with all the random commit messages. If they instead squash their commits into one commit, there will be only 4 commits that have to be pulled from main, and they will have really great explanations of what they do through their commit descriptions. Which brings me to a reminder: always keep in mind to regularly update main, so pull from main and merge main into your current branch. That way your branch stays up to date and you discover merge conflicts early on, and it will be easy to resolve them right away. The coding review can also be a great place to upkeep coding standards and find out if you need to have coding standards, and finally to enforce them. In conclusion, these are some of the best practices to work with GitHub in a team. Remember to open branches that isolate the work you're doing. Have good commit messages and commit in good intervals. Self-review your code, and finally have a nice code review where you can enforce coding standards. And finally, to squash your commits to not pollute your commit history with unnecessary commits. Following these practices will help your team work more efficiently and keep your code base clean and organized. That's all for today. If you disagree with any of these or have other great advice for GitHub practices, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching the video and have a great day. Bye.